Good morning, everybody. Nikki Burnett here, Taste Life Nutrition. Today is Taste Life Nutrition Radio, streaming live on KUHSdenver.com, which is, in my opinion, the best station on earth, where we are here to do our best to talk about truth. We want to talk truth in healthcare. Healthcare is, of course, physical, mental, and emotional, but it's also spiritual, it's relational, it's financial. It's all of the things that help us to build and to grow and to create this amazing, beautiful life that we have been put here to create. And sometimes we need help. And I know that I'm that way. I know a lot of times I need help. So I'm blessed to have a show like this where I have the ability to chat with and talk to and learn and grow myself from people who do really amazing things in this life to help to serve others and to help them grow and to reach their goals, whatever those goals are, right? And so today we have on Denise Fitzpatrick, which I love everything that you're about, because you've taken, your sort of your typical, this is what I see anyway, your typical marriage, couples, counseling, and you've flipped it on its head a little bit and said, this is what works. That's what I see. Do you think that's about right?
Yeah, I think that's definitely about right.
Good. I like those who are disruptors. I think disruption is important. And so I see you, that to me is a little bit of a disruptor to what we see as what's typical. So good for you. I love it. So we're going to be talking with Denise about some fun things when it comes to relationships. But first, as always, I need to turn my music down. Sorry, Henry. I'm always forgetting to turn my music down. I could hear it in the background. I was like, something's not right here. Anyway, so we always start the show with gratitude, because gratitude can change the world. There are always things, large or small, to be grateful for. And if we take the time to sit and reflect and write them down, I am not a great journaler, but I'm working on it. But write them down, and it is, I think it's inspirational to us. It's inspirational to our biochemistry. And it also can be inspirational and to others, because it is energetic. So, Denise, what are you grateful for?
Yeah, no, I love that. And that's something I also do with my own clients, because you're right about the energetics of gratitude. And there are so many things that I'm grateful for. And just like yourself, I'm not a big journaler. But these things are like always top of mind. And one of the things I'm most grateful for is my health, and just the fact that I'm able to move my body and get to the gym most every day and lift weights, and that to me, that in itself is just a miracle. And I feel really grateful for that.
Yeah, I love that, because really, we talk about miracles and how, I don't know, some of us see them and some of us don't, but what I fully believe is that everything that we are is so beautifully created that it is a miracle that we are alive. It's a miracle that this earth spins. It's a miracle that we are little creators, and we have the ability to create other little beings. I mean, to me, that's the most fascinating of all miracles, is that we actually can create little people. How does that work?
I agree with you that.
Yeah.
Really about it. It's pretty incredible.
It's amazing. It's beyond. I mean, it's beautifully and wonderfully awesome. And we use awesomes for everything at this point, but it is truly, truly awesome. I am, we all kind of go through our stuff. And there was a point last week, sort of 2 weeks ago, there was a point where I was literally driving in my car, and I was thinking about who I could go to for help. Who can I go to for help for, the situation? And I literally heard, which I love because it doesn't happen very often, and I'm waiting for it to happen more often, but I literally heard, go inside. And I just went, and then I heard it multiple times throughout the day from people. I went to a panel discussion and they kept talking about going inside. It's not outside, it's inside. And I just went, okay, I hear you. Thank you. So I'm super grateful for when I know that God is talking to me and is allowing me to hear him, because I feel like I don't get to hear him. I don't pay attention the way that I should. So that's always, it's my own practice, right? Is working on listening and paying attention. So when I was talking about journaling, I was like, well, okay, that's at least a place to start. And I'm just trying to journal, and I've done a little bit, so I'm getting there. But that's what I'm grateful for. I'm grateful for hearing and for listening, and hopefully continuing to pay attention. So anyway, that's my gratitude of the day. Oh, and I have to add this too, because if you know me, you know that I love Cellcore. They were a sponsor for a long time, and they just had a conference. And you want to talk about disruptors. This company is truly a disruptive to what we know as typical healthcare. And it's amazing, beautiful thing to see people who are out there speaking truth, backed by evidence. It's not just science, right? It's backed by evidence. So I would have to put that out there too, because I'm going to be doing some talks, I think some shows based on some of the things that I took away from this conference, which are quite disruptive. And if it's up to me, I'm going to find people that were at this conference and I'm going to have them on the show, because I think it's important to get the word out there. And we're kind of small, they're kind of big, but that's okay. We want to get the goodness out there as much as we can. So anyway, super grateful for Cellcore and all that they're doing for us as clients, as patients, as practitioners. They are truly kicking ass. It's good stuff. So all right, let's get into the fun stuff. Denise, we always I want to hear whatever part of your story you want to share, because I fully believe that so much of where we are today, if not entirely, but it is based on our story, based on our history. We can't learn if we don't go through trials and tribulations and the hard stuff, right? And so often as practitioners, our story, we become practitioners, or the practitioner that we are, because of our story. And so I would love to just hear whatever you want to tell us about that.
Well, yeah, that's definitely true. And I think if I hadn't kind of gone through my own journey and evolution in my own relationship, that I might not be as equipped to do what I'm doing with other couples right now. So for sure, earlier in my own marriage, I struggled with the exact same things that my clients are struggling with now. And there was a time when I thought, my husband needs to change, or I am never going to be happy, right? It's all in his hands. Why is he not doing the thing as soon as he does? And so there's a lot of, like, when you spoke about sort of turning inward, right? All of my focus was outside of myself. Other people were the cause of my suffering, or my bad mood, or my upset. And I primarily would put that on my husband. I wasn't really seeing myself clearly. I couldn't see any of my own blind spots. So there was just this kind of constant kind of pursuing, if you will, of him to be something different, so I could feel a different way. And of course, through my evolution and through my journey and doing my own work and training in how to help couples with their relationships, I was able to heal I healed my marriage by changing who I was, or changing the way that I thought about things and how I showed up as a partner, instead of expecting this to come from outside of me, right? And that is sort of the transformation that it sounds really simple, and I guess simple, yes, but it's very complex. And so that is the work that I now help my clients do. And now those are the kinds of transformations that I help them with, because that's truly the only path, I believe, to happiness in any relationship, particularly with yourself.
Yeah, I agree. And it just goes back to not simple, but simply, we can't expect to change others, right? We can, as a practitioner, I can guide others. I can give them advice. I can, tell them what I know, but they have to be the ones to do the work. And so same with me. Whatever I have to work on physically, mentally, emotionally, relationally, spiritually, all the things that we all have to work on, it has to be me. And I've been excited about this because I my husband and I have an amazing relationship. But it's always, could it be better? And what could I do for me to make it better? What am I not seeing about myself that could up level it that much more, right? Yeah.
Well, and that's awesome that you have that awareness to say to yourself, what could I do? Because so much of the suffering in couples relationships comes from people efforting to try and get the other person to be different, right? We're always going to be frustrated and disappointed when it's just this constant desire to get someone else to be different than they are, right? I mean, it's just, and it seems like, well, of course, that's obvious. And I think intellectually, a lot of people know I can't change the other person, but when you get caught up in those dynamics and those patterns in your marriage, it's really hard to kind of see that more clearly.
So I'm curious about you've been a counselor for, I didn't write it down, for a lot of years. Your bio is all over Facebook and everywhere. So go check it out. But you've been a counselor. You have all of this training, right? Did you, when you started going through this with your husband and started realizing, is that kind of when you started becoming the coach? And let's talk about the difference between a counselor and a coach and what you do versus what, somebody who's a marriage counselor or whatever you want to call them would do. You know my question.
So I'll answer the first part first, which is my becoming a coach didn't have so much to do with my relationship with my husband. I had already kind of come through that transformation and was really supporting couples in a different way than therapy. And that was why I decided I wanted to do coaching, which I'll come back to that a little bit more. But to answer the meat of that, which was what's the difference between counselor and coach. And so I still am a licensed counselor. I just don't practice as a therapist. I did for probably about 17 years. And the way that I see it as different, and having been in both roles, right, it's really about approach, right? So, the very first thing is, like, when you're doing therapy, you have to diagnose people. You have to give them a mental health diagnosis in order to, say, bill for insurance, if you're going to go the insurance route. If you're going to just do private pay, then you don't have to do that that part of it. Maybe you know that through your own business.
Yeah. Is it okay if I interrupt you with a question?
Yeah, go right ahead.
That sparks my mind into thinking, well, if you are practicing as a therapist and you have to diagnose, then you're labeling, right?
Right.
Do you find that problematic?
It's always been kind of problematic for me.
Yeah.
In fact, when I came out of grad school and I was doing some like per diem work in a couple of different clinics, and the first thing people told me is like, okay, all right, yeah, now you've got to give them a diagnosis. I'm like, well, wait a minute, I just met with them for 45 minutes. What do you mean I have to give them a diagnosis? So that was sort of like my first introduction to that, which was really weird. So I'm actually really happy to be away from that, that kind of like diagnosing and having to do all of that. So yes.
I would imagine so. And so now what has changed in, sorry, I'm going back and forth looking at you and looking at you. What has changed in your approach now that you don't have to diagnose, and of course you don't take insurance, which I think so many practitioners in all areas of health and wellness are getting away from taking insurance, right? It's a huge problem. Yeah.
And it's in the insurance business, like being a solo practitioner and billing insurance and dealing with insurance companies is a nightmare, actually.
Yeah.
So that's another thing I'm really grateful to not be having to deal with. But going back to the question about counselor and coach. So first thing I'll say is that coaching is, again, from my experience, much more goal focused and future focused and solution focused. At least in my approach, that's how I work with clients. Now, what I also will say is that most therapists that couples go to see are likely not skilled in doing couples work, because what a lot of people don't understand is that doing couples work and doing individual work is an entirely different skill set, right? So when I came out of grad school and started doing individual therapy, and I knew how to do that, like in my sleep, right? That it was just naturally, it was like who I was. But you have a couple sitting in your office who are who have been married for 20 years, and they're in this like volatile cycle of arguments and being really angry and resentful of each other. It takes an entirely different skill set to be able to manage that than it does to be sitting with just one person in the room. And so I think a lot of therapists unknowingly treat couples when they probably don't have the skills for that. And then, of course, the consumer doesn't really have the knowledge around what makes a good couples therapist, right? So you might just pick somebody because, they take my insurance, but are they really equipped to help you? So that's first thing, like just saying it's a different skill set. So be mindful of that. And I will even, like, if people are calling me who are looking for insurance, and I say, okay, don't take insurance, and it's not an option for them to work with me, I want to point them in the right direction too. I will do a small bit of education in that moment too, to say, here's what you should be looking for if you're going the insurance route.
Yeah.
Because too many couples who have come to me post marriage therapy counseling with unskilled therapists who were in a worse predicament than when they started, right? It's not to bash therapists, because again, I was one. I just think when it comes to couples work versus individual work, there's just not enough knowledge or education around what it really takes.
Yeah, I would imagine that it's so much more difficult when you have so many different dynamics that come in to play. And so, and at the same time, that's the hard part about being the consumer, the patient, the client, whatever it is you want to call it too, because how do you know what you're looking for? And it takes time and research and asking questions and interviewing. You know, I tell people all the time to interview their practitioners. I also tell people to build their team, because you might need more than one practitioner for things. But it's something that you've got to put time and effort into, and ask the questions, find out what the right questions are to ask, so you know you're not wasting your time. You know you're not going to end up making things worse, because that's what can happen. I mean, I see it in my practice all the time also, where people are like either dismissed or they're worse, or never, nothing ever happened, or they didn't do what they were told to do, so they were kicked out of the practice that they're in. So lots of things can happen, and so it can be really difficult, which I want to put out there is why another reason why we have this show, because my goal is to bring on practitioners who are here to serve, but at the same time, if you don't have all the answers, who to send to, or how to give people the tools to know what to look for, right? And that's what I want too. I want to be able to give people the tools, the questions to ask, whatever it is, to know what to look for, as well as anybody who comes through the show or anybody who I have contact with. I want this to be a resource for those who need it. Anyway, I will stop going on and on, but it's just so important.
I agree. Yeah.
Great. So I think that what I find super interesting, and I want to make sure I say this in the proper, because I have several questions for you. So let's stay with couples first, and I think so. This is maybe a sort of a two-part question. Is most couples, I think so often, and you see this time after time after time, but you see that couples tend to wait, and they wait, and I don't know, if they just think that they can fix it or what. So they continue to wait, and then the question on top of that is it ever too late?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So why do they wait? I think that, so many of us, maybe all of us, go into marriage with this idea of what it's going to be like, right? It's sort of the happily ever after, and just thinking that the work is just getting to the point of getting married, and then once I get married, I can just kind of sit back and relax. Like we've accomplished it, we've done the thing. What most people don't realize is that's exactly when the work starts, right? We put so much effort, and we invest time, money into planning a huge wedding, huge celebration for this one day, but yet we don't really think about, well, how do we plan for our marriage? What are we going to do to make sure our marriage is as good as our wedding day, right? So then once people get married and they realize, well, it actually does take work, right? All their differences start coming to the surface. They're bumping up against conflicts. They're not quite sure how to deal with them. And then they get stuck in these patterns. And they think to themselves, wait a minute, what is happening here? I thought this would just be way easier than it is. Like, I think we all have this kind of awakening or disillusionment where we kind of come to the surface and go, wait a minute, this is not what I expected. So here's what happens. People effort to change the other person for a really long time. Mm-hmm. So that's one reason people wait, right? Because they keep thinking, well, if I just keep at it, eventually they'll get it, right? There's that belief. And what happens too is if one person is wanting the other person to change and they get to this breaking point of like, okay, well, we're not going to be able to do this anymore. You've really got to step it up. And so the other person might step it up for a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, a month, and like things get better for a period of time. It's like, okay, this is good until the next time, right? So that cycle might repeat for a really long time. And so there's another belief. We should be able to figure this out on our own.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so there's some thought like, wow, we must be really in a bad way if we need to start reaching out for help. So I'm not ready to go down that path. That's just one step closer to breaking up or divorce or something, which actually couldn't be further from the truth. a lot of people see it as a weakness, like, oh, we need help. That we must be really bad off. And then what if the therapist can't help us?
Mm-hmm.
Then we're really screwed, right? And so some people just don't even want to open that can of worms.
So it's so interesting because we talk about preventive health care, right? We talk about maintenance and maintaining and doing the work now so we don't have to play catch up later on. Catch up, disease symptoms, whatever it might be that can happen later on. Why is it that we don't see that in ourselves? Like everybody I believe everybody can use some kind of therapy, counseling, take it for whatever it is, because it's maintenance. It helps us. We have to see, sometimes we need somebody who's outside of us to help to guide us through whatever it is that we're dealing with, or to help us to maintain, or to help us to grow, right? And so it's interesting that a lot of people don't see that for their mental and emotional health as well as their relational health. It's so interesting.
Yeah, and they don't. I think they don't. Number one, they don't prioritize it, right? Because then we also get in the busyness of life, and the marriage is kind of the last thing on the list. And in that moment, you might think, "Oh, we definitely need to do something," but then it's like, "Oh, our jobs are busy, and we're raising kids, and we'll get to it. We'll get to it, or it'll probably get better on its own if we just wait." Right? Again, none of that being true.
Yeah.
And I really want to break that stigma too. And even just the other day, I had somebody saying that same thing about, well, I felt like needing that kind of help for our marriage was a really bad sign. Instead of seeing it as actually a sign of strength, that we're actually reaching out and we're doing something positive for our marriage, right? Rather than just letting it sit and get worse. And when our marriage is in a bad place, it affects our whole quality of life, right? It impacts all areas. So by doing something positive for your marriage, you're actually doing something to improve your whole quality of life.
Yeah. And so, is it ever too late?
So, I heard that I am. So barring things like affairs, which I still think there are plenty of people that do recover from affairs, addictions, or abuse, those three are sort of the caveats to this. But other than that, I would say it's not too late if it's what you want, right? Yeah. And I say that because the majority of people that I work with are folks that are not dealing with affairs, addictions, or abuse, right? They're regular folks like myself, like you, who are just struggling in their relationship. And the fact is, nobody teaches us how to do this stuff. We never learn. Most of us don't have great role models. And so we get stuck in these repeated patterns. And most of the time, these are not deal breaker issues like affairs, addiction, or abuse. And so we're dealing with everyday issues, but people don't know how to communicate about them. And so the ineffective ways that they're trying to resolve their issues is really what's causing the damage and the breakdown in the relationship. So it's not the issue itself, but the process and the way that couples go about interacting around these issues. So if we take deal breaker issues off the table, can these patterns be fixed? 100%. If you're willing to step in there and do the work, and you're really committed to seeing your marriage succeed.
So you brought up a really interesting point. I think it's super interesting, is what you said is most of us don't have good role models. So what if, so anybody who is out there sort of and listening to this, and you need guidance, what if you don't get help and you're having difficulty in your marriage and it's affecting your children, and then your children go and do the same thing, and then your children's children go and do the same thing and the same thing, and it just perpetuates, right? What if, though, right now you were to say, okay, I don't want this to get any worse. I want to be a good role model. We need good, Lord knows we need good role models right now. What if I or we can go get some help, some guidance, so we can be good role models and not, I think, and I don't have kiddos, but what I'm seeing with where we are is the amazing amount of impression that they take on, and then what that does for their life, and then their kids. You know, I talk about epigenetics all the time, and how mental and emotional trauma can be sent on for generations. We can be affected by generations behind us from mental and emotional trauma, but also physical trauma. All of this stuff, we think it's just in the moment, and we want to live in the moment, but we got to think about what we're passing on, because the food we eat, the thoughts we think, the relationships that we have, the spirituality that we have, the beliefs about ourselves, the beliefs about the world, all of these things are in us. They're in every single cell. They're in our DNA, and they move on. And it's amazing and fascinating, which is why I love it so much. But it puts so much accountability and responsibility on me, on parents, to take a look at whatever it is that's going on, whether it's the relationship, the food, the what you're putting on your skin kind of stuff, the thoughts that you have. You know, we all have this propensity toward negative self-talk. I do too. I work on it all the time. But knowing the impact that can have on those around us, including our little kiddos who take in all of this stuff.
Yeah, and sometimes that is the thing that brings people in. Not always, but there's
sure.
Often when I'm on a call with somebody, we're making a decision about whether or not to work together, I will ask them, okay, you know, you've been married for 15 years and you've been in this pattern for whatever, 10, 12 years, so why now? And they will say, well, I noticed that, you know, it's starting to impact our kids, or they're saying something about all the arguments, or they notice that we're, however it is, we're being with each other, that's really, and they say, yeah, I don't want this for my kids, right? And they can reflect on it and say, I want for my kids better than what I had. So that can be the thing that really pushes people to say, yes, we have to do something here.
Cool, good. Here's what I find fascinating too, and amazing, because, you know, when we think that we need couples therapy, sorry, I'm looking at how many people are watching. I'm super curious. We have 6,000 people watching right now, something like that.
Oh my God.
So kind of cool. Anyway, it's fun. Henry puts this little video up here for me so I can see. I think that's right. Anyway, so not point to that. Besides that, I got totally distracted. We think that we need to, and I think it's smart, right? So this isn't that we shouldn't, but you know, we believe that we have to go to therapy, and to make it work, it's got to be both of us, therapy or counseling or coaching, right? But that's not necessarily the case, right? So speak to that. How is it that one person can go see you and can make things better?
Well, so that's how I changed my own relationship, right? By doing the work on myself. And so if you think of it like a relationship is a system, right? And so I like to think of it as like that circle with the arrows that just keep going around and around and around, right? And so say you do something, your partner has a reaction, and that causes another reaction, and then you just keep going around and around and around, right? And it's kind of like, well, where did it start? And it doesn't matter, right? It's just that what you do influences what they do, and what they do influences what you do.
Yep.
Right? And so think of it like the two of you doing a dance, right? That whole dynamic could be considered a dance. And then if one person changes up their moves, it automatically is going to shift the whole system, right? If you're doing a dance and you take a step out of the dance, or you do a different dance move, then it changes the whole dance, changes the system. So naturally, if your behavior influences them and their behavior influences you, if you do something different, you're going to get a different response from your partner, right? And a lot of people, like you said, believe, well, we both have to be there. And sure, it can be even more effective. But if you've got a resistant partner who says, no way, I'm not doing that, I'm not going to go, that's not a reason not to work on the relationship. You can still work on the relationship, because if you start doing things differently, your partner's going to automatically, or just sort of as a byproduct, show up differently. So and it takes, if you're the person who's deciding to do the work, you have to decide that you're willing to work on your side of the street, that you're willing to work on yourself to make a difference in the relationship without expectation of what the other person is going to do, right? And so that takes kind of a strong person to admit, like, okay, my partner doesn't want to, and I'm a pleasant experience. And if you want to change your experience in the relationship, you can do things. You can take control of that by changing what you're doing, right? So think of it less of like, oh, I'm doing this for them. I'm doing it for me, because I want to have a better experience in the relationship. And so I'm going to take charge and control the things that I can control, so I can give myself a better experience, right? That's how we really just take 100% responsibility and ownership of creating our own happiness.
Yeah, one, I think, it's something that I try to talk about a lot too, is that we're accountable for ourselves, and we are responsible for ourselves, and in everything that we do. We can't be responsible for much of anything else, right? Because it can be really hard. But we can be responsible for getting the help when we need it. And again, going back to what I fully believe, can also affect us mentally and emotionally, but is what we're eating and what we're putting on our skin, and what's in our environment and all of the things. I don't mean to be too repetitive, but I do think it's important to know that so many things can have an impact on the way that we feel about ourselves, the way that we view the world. If our body's not functioning the way that it should, if it's not functioning optimally, if there are organ systems, if our GI is out of whack, or all of these things that can happen. We've got these massive toxicities that are all around us, and if we're not detoxifying properly, the liver, there's a lot of emotion that lives in the liver, and if it's congested, there's a lot of emotion that just sits there, and there's a lot of anger, and so it's so interesting to, if we can take it, it's layers of the onion, and just start somewhere. Start with talking with someone, start with making sure you're detoxifying, start with eating healthy food, which is different for everyone, and so anyway, I think that's
on that, so just to say, you were saying like detoxify, right? I love that, because when I think about relationships, people carry around the weight of anger and resentment, right? That's a toxin. That is toxic. And so part of doing this work is, as you said, detox is detoxing from all of these really negative emotions that are weighing you down, that are zapping your joy, that are affecting your quality of life.
Yeah, totally agree. I was talking about the conference that I went to, and one of the things that was being discussed was, so often we talk about detoxifying. I have to do a detox, so it's this quarterly detox or yearly detox or whatever it is, when truly we have to detox every single day. It has to be a focus. So yes, our thoughts and the negativity, but also the toxins. We have to work on detoxification all the time, because we are, man, again, going back to this conference, I was like, holy smokes, the stuff that our little bodies deal with that it doesn't know how to deal with, right? And it's hard, but there are a lot of good people out there, you included, and who are out there just working your magic, getting the goodness out there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about, for you and the way that you work. How do you know? I mean, I'm assuming, because I know when I'm working with someone, or before I work with someone, I talk to them for a little while, right? So we kind of are interviewing each other. It's this little freebie. Hey, let's get to know each other just a little bit. Let me know what's going on with you. I tell you how I think I can help or refer, and then we go from there. And so, how do you know? What is it that helps you to know people are a good fit for you?
Yeah, so I think this goes back to one of the first questions we were talking about in terms of the coaching and counseling, and I don't know that I actually fully answered that question, but so my approach to working with people is, like I said, very goal focused, and it's with people that are committed to making their marriage work, right? I definitely want to know that somebody's not coming in just to check a box and say, if there's a leaning out partner and they come in just to check the box and say, well, I tried, but it didn't work, right? So I want to work with folks that are really committed to making the marriage work, that they're really wanting to avoid divorce. That's not the route that they want to go. And they're willing to do the work. Mm-hmm. They know that there's not, I'm not a quick fix, and I have no magic, but I know what works. I have a plan, I have a process, and that's what's different about me than a counselor or a therapist is, and I hear this from anybody, like clients of mine that have worked with therapists before, they get into sort of just rehashing the argument of the week, or fighting over the actual content of problems, rather than okay, what's the goal? What are we headed towards? What is the desired outcome here? What do you want your relationship to look like at the end of this? Not who do you want your partner to be, but what are the qualities that you want your relationship to have? What will you be doing, thinking, feeling? Really get a clear picture so we know exactly what they're working towards, and then I help them step by step do what they need to do to get there, mm-hmm. right? And that might be in the form of communication, learning how to listen to each other better, learning how to speak to each other in a different way, building the emotional muscle to accept your partner, to accept differences, to be in conflict without it erupting into a huge blowout, right? A lot of it is your own self capacities that you're strengthening and growing. And so it takes somebody that has a certain level of self-awareness, a certain level of emotional intelligence, perhaps somebody that has been in therapy before and is familiar with how that process works, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had someone reach out to me last week, and the question that and this was through text messaging, right? So I always think it's funny, but the question was, I'm reaching out to you to ask about a weight loss pill. I've been putting on weight, and whatever else it was that she said, and I went, a weight loss pill. Okay. So it's funny because what you were saying just sort of triggered that. So often we want the quick fix, we want the pill. And I think a lot of us are coming around to the understanding that there are no quick fixes for much of anything, including drugs, because drugs can make things worse. Sometimes they can make things better also. But it took if you think back, and a lot of this we don't know, but how many years did it take to get to that point to where you are, right? Physically, again, going back to the physical, mental, emotional, all of the things, how long did it take for your relationship to get to where it is? How long did it take for your health condition to get to where it is? All of these things have been going on for a long, long time. Habits are hard to break, right? And so to believe that there's a quick fix and that you don't have to put the work in, whatever it is, at minimum, it's misguided. But we have to, everything is work, but it's the work that makes it better, right? And the work is where the growth comes in. It's the hard stuff is where the growth comes in. We say that a lot, but it's true, and it kind of can suck in the moment. But imagine, I had somebody I had on the show not too long ago, but she's like, sometimes you have to go through the river to get to the other side, right? You got to go through the really hard stuff that's almost going to wash you away, and you got to work really hard, and you got to get through, and then you get to the bank, and onto the bank, you're like, look at the beautiful meadow. I'm seeing the mountains in my eyes right now, or in my mind. But it all takes work. It just does. That's life, is work, right? And happiness, but
a lot of the work that I do with my clients too is around managing their mindset and their expectations. Mm-hmm. Because like you said, they maybe 15, 20 years, they've been doing this repeated pattern in their marriage, and 3 sessions in, or even 2 months in, it's like, oh, but we hit this spot again. I'm so frustrated. Like, why is this not changing? But they've forgotten the 5 other moments in time where it actually was better.
Yeah.
But they see this one recurring moment that is similar to what used to happen, and they think, oh, nothing's changing, right? Yeah. And so easy for our brains to want to discount the positive and focus on the negative. Like you were saying before, like we all kind of have this tendency to negative self-talk. So even like a couple months in, clients might be focusing on the one thing that resembles the old pattern, forgetting the 5 things that were better. So it's managing their mindset around that. Like, okay, let's remember, you've been doing this for 15 years. It's not going to change overnight. And let's look at the progress you have made. Because it's easy to go to that place of, it's not working, and then just go down the rabbit hole, right? And that mindset alone is going to prevent you from getting back to doing what you know is working and moving forward. Yeah. Right? So much of the mindset piece, as I'm sure it is in your work as well, that is really going to make or break people's success.
Mm-hmm. I think it's the key to success. It's if we, I don't know a lot about energy and the way that it works. I do know that we're energetic beings, and it was the way God created us. And there's this realm out there that I just think is so fascinating when it comes to quantum belief and what it is that we believe that can create who we are and how we react to the world and how we react with other people, and so many of these things. I'm like, this is just so fascinating. But that I think that so often in my work, and it's not my world is working on mindset, but it's helping to move the mindset forward. And I might have to bring somebody else on board, as their partner, as their team member, to help them to move forward so we can get our work done. I've seen that on multiple occasions. Where my work is not going where it needs to go. Something's blocking it, right? Something's in the way. Is it history? Is it past? Is it a mental block? What could it be that's not allowing for their body to become more balanced as it should? And so same with you. If there are blocks, if the mindset's not in the right place, it can totally inhibit any work that you're trying to do. Yeah,
and a big one with couples is really the the story or the narrative or the labels that they have for their partner. Right? And those all, just like behavioral patterns, these thought patterns become ingrained. So you might have this story, oh, he's so selfish, or she's so angry all the time, or whatever the label is. We have that story about our partner, and then in our minds, that's the only way that they can show up. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because every interaction we're going to come to with this thought that, well, this is what they're going to do anyway, right? Mm-hmm. We've got all these assumptions. Of course they're going to show up like that. This is what they do all the time, right? Yeah. And so that actually prevents you from being able to see your partner mm-hmm. in a better, more positive light. So there's a lot of work just around that, around changing that narrative.
I have a story that is mostly kind of what you're saying. Maybe not entirely, but it's a fresh story, like just from last night. So it's one of those things that when we don't communicate, then we only know our side of the story. And so I think it's kind of a funny story, so I'm going to say it because this is what's been happening for years. And he's probably not watching, but if you're watching, hi honey, love you. So yesterday morning, so he got up before I did, and what he'll do is he'll take the covers, and he's a bed maker, which is awesome, and he makes the bed, or he pulls his side of the covers, and this has been happening for years. And he doesn't notice, but the covers slap me in the face while I'm sleeping. And so I immediately wake up and I'm angry. I'm like, wow, how can you not know that you just slapped me in the face with the covers? So, like I said, this has been going on for years. So just last night, we were in bed, and I said, by the way, if you get up in the morning before me, please leave the covers alone. Just get out of the bed and don't move them. He's like, why? And I told him, he's like, I thought I was doing a good thing. I thought I was making my side of the bed so you wouldn't have to. I was like, I love you for that, but do you not see that you slapped me in the face? He's like, no.
Right? But did your simple request actually make a difference?
Yeah. Well, I got up before him this morning, but it will, because I think it was impactful. But we were able to talk about it, which I should have done years ago. Right.
So many people stay stuck in mm-hmm. really far worse things than that, right?
Right.
Because they're not speaking up, mm-hmm. because they might think, oh, it'll be a no, or there'll be some big reaction, mm-hmm. right? Because all of these patterns of avoiding get really cemented in, yet just sometimes it's just taking that risk and making that simple request that can actually just completely turn things around.
Yeah, I had to think through it. It's like, okay, this can't keep happening. How do I do this? And instead of, because I think what could have happened that I don't like to be a part of, and it has happened, but could have happened, is I could have just yelled right then and just been really angry, and that would have not been okay, because he thought he was doing a good thing, which I had no clue about, obviously. Anyway, so yes, I obviously that's a pretty simple thing, and it's really funny, kind of, but it's one of those things where I had to think about my part in that. What is my part in this situation, and how can I make it better and understand him, because now I understand where his mind is, and his mind's always in a good place. But anyway, interesting stuff.
Oh, I think that's a great example of like how we can just kind of step up, take ownership, and say the thing.
Yeah.
And it usually will work out in a positive way. Mm-hmm. But we've got our minds so conditioned that it's going to go poorly.
Yeah.
That we avoid doing the thing.
Mm-hmm. Right. So with that, you have a program. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so Marriage Mastery is my private coaching program. I only work with couples privately or women individually. I don't do any kind of group coaching at this point. And it's a 3-month commitment, and sometimes people continue to work with me beyond the 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, sometimes a year, because again, it took us a long time to get here. It's going to take some time to get on the other side of that. And so within that 3 months time, there are essentially 4 phases that I work on people with. And that is the the connection piece, which is connection to self, right? We have to own our part. We have to be willing to not just be in a place of blame and expecting our partner to do all the changing so we can feel better. And again, this isn't to like blame yourself. This is just to say, I have a part here, and I want to take control of what I can take control of, right? So that there's a whole phase just around reconnecting with yourself, owning the part that you can own, getting clear on what your work is going to be in getting the relationship to a better place. And then the second part of that is context. And this is all about perspective, all about what, like I was saying before, the narrative, the stories, what we make things mean. The big piece of this is the mindset work, right? How are we thinking about ourselves? How are we thinking about our partner? And again, what labels are we carrying around, and not kind of also cultivating the thoughts of positive things about our partner and about our marriage, right? Like I was saying in that example before, focusing on the one thing that didn't go well and, discarding the 5 that were better. So that's where, in context, a lot of that mindset work comes into play. And then the third part is communication. And this is skill-based, really about how do we manage our emotional reactions so that we can communicate in effective ways. It might mean taking risks, like saying the things that we might not want to say, not being afraid of conflict, because quite honestly, conflict is an opportunity for growth. If you're avoiding that conflict, then you're avoiding the growth of your relationship, because unless you confront that, work through it, and move on from it, then you stay stagnant, you stay stuck. So I really want to help people get comfortable with the idea that conflict is not a bad thing. It's a good thing, and it's going to help you evolve and grow. And finally, the commitment piece, which is prioritizing your relationship, right? So if things are in not a great place, it's likely you've gotten to a place where you might be trying to avoid each other or spend less time together. There's really a lack of connection, a lack of daily ways of, hey, I really like you and I really appreciate you. So in order to create something different and better and more connected, then you have to get back to prioritizing your relationship. And so that's helping people like literally carve out time, calendar time, treating time with your partner like an important meeting at work. It would never be optional to bag out on this particular meeting with your CEO or something. So let's bring that same mindset to prioritizing your marriage and figuring out what are the daily things you can be doing to really nurture and sort of like fertilize your marriage so it continues to grow and evolve and move forward in a positive direction.
Yeah, I love that. There is my husband's aunt and uncle had for I don't know however many years a date night that I think it was every Friday night they would have a date night, and it was just the 2 of them, and that's all there was to it. And I love that, and my husband really loved that too. He's wanted to do that, and we haven't. And so those little things, right, that can make such a big difference.
And it's totally okay to schedule time. Maybe it's lunch in the middle of the week, and I think it's okay to schedule sex too. I know a lot of people are opposed to that. That's a whole other area that I also cover with couples too. If they're having, struggles in the bedroom, like we work on all of that stuff as well. And we talk about it all.
Yeah. Well, it's part of it, right? It's a part of life. We have this, we've taken sex into this very negative place, but it's a very beautiful thing. I mean, it's it's connection, it's creation, it's all of these awesome things that it is. And so I think that's awesome, and I think that maybe we should have you on again and talk about that. That would be super fun.
Well, it's also helping couples get comfortable talking about sex too.
Yeah.
A lot of them have never even had that conversation.
Yeah.
So in my office, or whether we're on Zoom or in my office, it's just normalizing. Like, let's talk about it like we would talk about other things in relationships.
Yeah.
Let's take this away. It's okay. Let's just put it all out there. And so if I'm comfortable and I sort of lead the way around that, then it helps them feel more comfortable to share.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Well, why don't you tell people where they can find you?
Okay. Yeah, so you can find me on my website at mymarriageworks.com. And if there are any people on Facebook, it's just my name, Denise Fitzpatrick. And I also have a Facebook group for women. Sorry, guys. But if you are a woman and you're interested in joining my Facebook group, you can find it from my personal profile, but it's empoweringwomeninmarriage.com, or it might be empowering women in relationships. I'm not quite sure. I don't know. I might have put it in the show notes, so I don't know if you'll be sharing those with. Yeah. But you can find it from my personal profile on Facebook. I'm not really on. I have a profile on Instagram, but I'm not really active. Facebook is my main place.
Okay.
If somebody was interested in scheduling a call with me, then they could also do that through my website as well.
Awesome. So yes, today, tomorrow, Monday-ish. No, it's a holiday. Soon, all of your information will be in all of the Facebook notes. It'll be in the YouTube notes. It'll be in the podcast notes, all of that stuff. So your information should be everywhere attached to this show, so people can reach out. But check her out. Check out her website. I've got a ton of notes here from your website. It's great. I love the way that you approach working with women and with couples. I think it's needed. It's important. And if you are struggling out there, then reach out to Denise, whether she can help you or she knows somebody. That's what we're here for, is to be a resource and to build each other up. So for me, of course, you can find me, tastelifenutrition.com. All of the social media is Taste Life Nutrition. Go to the website. There is a free assessment on there and I'll reach out to you personally and we'll chat about it, and we'll of course see if there's something that I can do to help, or if there's something or someone I can refer you to. And then I always mean to talk about this early on and I forget, but Soulful Conception has launched. It is about preconception planning. It's so important to take the time prior to getting pregnant to get you healthy, whether you are male or female, get you healthy prior to that point. Because, as I said earlier, your health today has the capability of affecting generations to come. We are in a place where we get a lot of sick and fearful people, and is that generational? Potentially. And are we able to turn that around? Absolutely. So take the time. If it's not your world to be thinking of preconception planning right now, you know somebody who is. And I have experts who are involved in this program, who are part of my team, who are outside of my knowledge and understanding, and can bring their knowledge and understanding. So it's kind of like this show. I'm bringing in people who are there to help you in all aspects of preconception planning, mind, mental, emotional, physical, if you're going through fertility treatments, all of the things. So it's good stuff. I'm super excited about it. So reach out if you have questions. Reach out to Denise if you need anything. And we'll see you next week on Thursday, 10 a.m. Of course, streaming live on KUHS Denver. Bye, everybody. Thanks, Denise, so much.
This is great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Give me 1 second.